Let the stories carry you into sleep. The winter wind cut through my coat as I stood outside the Crystal Monarch Hotel, gripping the keycard with numb fingers. The hotel shimmered behind the glass like a world I didn't belong to, even though I built it. Inside, I could hear my father's unmistakable laugh rising above clinking glasses and piano notes. His birthday dinner, his celebration, his legacy. Without me. Blocking the entrance in a burgundy designer knockoff was my sister, Natalie Miller. Perfectly rehearsed, surgically smug. "You really think you're coming in here?" she scoffed, glancing me up and down like I was a stain on her world. Her heels clicked as she repositioned herself directly in front of the revolving door. "This is the Crystal Monarch, Lian. The tasting menu alone costs more than your rent." If only she knew. I hadn't paid rent since 2016. I stayed calm. Steady. "He's my father too," I said quietly, my voice stronger than I felt. Inside my clutch was a small envelope, the deed to a private vineyard estate in Bordeaux, my gift, my peace offering, my line in the sand. Natalie's laugh was hollow. "Mum said only family and important guests tonight, people who actually matter." I looked past her at the marble floors I had selected, the chandelier I'd personally commissioned. Every inch of this hotel bore my touch, my design, my money, my name. Hidden behind a corporate shell they never cared to Google. Still they saw what they wanted, the girl who walked away, the daughter who didn't follow the script. From behind Natalie, I spotted someone inside glance in my direction. For a second, our eyes met. Then she turned away. And in that moment, something inside me snapped back into place, like a lock turning. I wasn't the outsider, they were the guests, and it was time they learned whose name was on the deed. 10 years ago, I stood in a different doorway, my parents' front porch, holding a college acceptance letter in one hand and my heart in the other. Back then, I still believed that love from a family like mine came with terms I could someday meet. "You're throwing away your future," my father, Harold Miller, had said as he tore the letter in two. "Hospitality? You want to serve people? That's not a career. That's embarrassment." Beside him, my mother, Elaine, offered a polite smile, soaked in disappointment. "Your sister Natalie just made law review. Why can't you be more like her?" I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just left, with a suitcase, a $300 community college scholarship, and a silent promise that one day I'd build something they couldn't ignore. And I did. Brick by brick, failure by failure. I waited tables, cleaned rooms, slept in staff quarters while working 2 jobs. Every guest I served taught me something about class, pride, or pain. Every insult from my family carved deeper resolve. While Natalie climbed a ladder someone else built, I constructed mine from scratch. While my mother hosted garden parties, I pitched business plans in dingy conference rooms lit by vending machines. And now, here we were. The Crystal Monarch sparkled behind Natalie's dismissive smirk, as if it had forgotten the girl who once studied restaurant layouts on napkins. But I hadn't forgotten. They thought they'd buried me 10 years ago when I chose dreams over legacy, but I was never buried. I was planted, and tonight, under the very roof they tried to keep me out of, I was about to bloom, with enough force to shake the entire foundation they stood on. Natalie crossed her arms, basking in her performance like she'd won something. "You shouldn't make a scene," she hissed. "Mum said we can't afford embarrassment tonight. We have real guests inside, judges, executives, old money, people who know the difference between status and survival." I tilted my head. "You mean the Holloways? Thomas Blackwood? Mr. Quiet from First State Bank?" Her eyes flickered. I smiled. I knew every name she was about to brag about, because I'd personally approved their RSVP list. Through a shell company, of course. I didn't need my name on the invitation, I just needed it on the building. Natalie scoffed. I'm not going to argue with someone who probably Ubered here. I thought of the jet I flew in that morning, and the penthouse suite waiting for me upstairs. Behind her, my mother appeared. Elaine Miller, dressed in pearls and that hollow look she always wore when she had to acknowledge my existence. "Leon," she said, clipped and cold. "We told you not to come. This evening is important." I held her gaze. "It's important to me too. He's my father." "He doesn't need reminders of his failures on his birthday," she snapped. "Let's not ruin the photos." My chest burned, not from hurt, from clarity. They hadn't changed. They never would. "You're right," I said, stepping back. Natalie smirked. "But you might want to step aside now," I added softly. "Why would I?" Then the glass doors behind her slid open with a low hiss. A tall figure in a tailored suit stepped out, calm, commanding. "Madam CEO," said Owen Carter, my head of security, "your table is ready. Chef Renata is awaiting your approval for the wine pairing." And just like that, the entire game flipped. The color drained from Natalie's face as Owen Carter addressed me with quiet authority. "Madam CEO," he repeated with just enough weight on the title to make it echo in the marble foyer. Behind her, my mother's pearl necklace twitched like it had suddenly gotten too tight. "CEO?" she stammered. "Leon, what is this?" I stepped forward, finally letting my heels click on the floors I had personally chosen 2 renovation cycles ago. "I believe you said tonight was for family and important guests. I'm both." Elaine Miller blinked rapidly, her voice barely audible. "But you're in hospitality, not ownership." Natalie shook her head, refusing to compute. "You're not even listed on any Forbes articles. You don't show up online." I shrugged. "That's the beauty of private holding companies. I don't need headlines. I built the infrastructure they write about." Owen stepped aside as the doors opened fully. Through the grand lobby, every staff member stood straighter, eyes locking on me. Not out of fear, but pride. From the bellhop to Jasmine Myers at the front desk, each one nodded with silent respect. "Your usual table is ready in the executive lounge," Owen said. "Chef Renata has prepared the Bordeaux pairing for your approval." Natalie's designer clutch slipped from her fingers and hit the marble with a thud. I turned slightly toward her. "Still think I Ubered?" My mother clutched her shawl, visibly unraveling. "Leon, why wouldn't you tell us?" I looked her in the eyes for the first time in years. "Because you never asked. You were too busy being embarrassed by who I was becoming to notice who I already was." And then I walked through the lobby, my lobby, as the chandeliers above lit the path they once told me I'd never be worthy to walk. He looked at me like I'd grown a second face. My father, Harold Miller, stood from the head of the VIP table, napkin half folded in his lap, confusion creasing his forehead, like a man staring at a ghost he didn't know he'd buried. "Leon," he said, how did you get past security?" The room had gone dead silent. Forks hovered mid-air. Eyes shifted from me to him, then back to me. I smiled politely. "Happy birthday, Dad. Hope you don't mind that I crashed your party." "In my own hotel." Whispers rippled like static. Then came the voice of Mr. Quiet, sharp and clear. "Miss Leon, wait, Leon Miller, you're the CEO of Monarch Holdings." I nodded once. Mr. Quiet turned to my father, relief sweeping over his face like a man who'd just found the key to a locked vault. "Harold, I had no idea she was your daughter. We've been trying to get a meeting with her for 6 months." At the far end of the table, Thomas Blackwood half stood. "You're the Lean Miller?" The one acquiring half of Michigan Avenue's prime blocks? My father's face lost all color. And then my mother, still clutching her pearls like they could shield her, whispered, "But you were just in restaurants." "I still am," I said softly. "Only now I own them." Someone dropped a wine glass. My sister, Natalie, sank back in her seat like the floor had tilted. I stepped toward my father. "All those years you called me a waitress. Turns out that waitress built something bigger than all of you combined." Then the staff parted like water, revealing the gift box I had brought. The one Natalie refused to let me hand him. It held the deed to a place they all once dreamed of, but could never afford. Funny how silence gets louder when people start realizing you're not who they thought. I placed the black envelope gently on the white linen tablecloth. It was the same envelope Natalie had mocked when I arrived. Now it drew more attention than the chandelier overhead. My father stared at it like it might explode. "What is that?" he asked, his voice small. "The deed," I replied. "To the vineyard estate in Bordeaux. I had it signed over last month. I thought you might enjoy a place to grow old, with peace." Elaine's lips parted, stunned. "You were going to give him that?" "I was, but I'm not sure you would have let me if you'd known what was inside." Natalie tried to regain control. "That's insane. That estate's valued at $14.6 million, Mr. Quiet interjected. "I should know. My team just appraised it during your firm's loan application." My mother turned to Gavin, wide-eyed. "Loan application?" Gavin coughed, loosening his tie. We've been negotiating with Monarch Holdings for weeks. It's the only property we could afford near the Loop." I turned to him. "You mean the building I own?" He didn't answer. Elaine stood suddenly. "Leon, this is humiliating." "No, Mom," I said, calm as glass. "This is clarity. For once, we're not pretending. You always cared more about appearances than people. I became invisible so your illusion could survive." My voice dropped. "But illusions don't pay rent." The room fell quiet again, tension coiling like wire. And just then, Jasmine Myers stepped into the room, holding a velvet folder. "Apologies," she said, "but Mr. Holloway's firm missed their lease deadline." Every pair of eyes turned to Gavin. And just like that, the golden fiancé cracked under pressure. Some things don't shatter with noise. They crack in silence. Natalie hadn't said a word since Jasmine announced Gavin's firm missed their lease. Her back was straight, jaw clenched, eyes frozen on a centerpiece she wasn't really seeing. The air around her thickened with humiliation. Across the table, my father rubbed his forehead like trying to erase the scene. "Is this true?" he asked Gavin, voice dangerously low. Gavin didn't answer. He didn't have to. The truth had already been delivered neatly by a front desk manager with perfect posture. I took a sip of my wine. "It's ironic," I said, not to anyone in particular, "how quickly the walls fall when they're built on names instead of merit." Elaine shifted in her chair. "Leon, we didn't know." "You didn't want to know," I interrupted softly. "You crowned Natalie the success story before I even left home." "And Gavin?" "He was your prince with a bank tie and country club teeth." Mr. Quiet cleared his throat. "To be clear, we were under the impression that Natalie was leasing her firm's office from an independent developer. Had we known Monarch Holdings was involved, she wouldn't be in this position," I finished for him. "And her promotion would have gone through without delay." Natalie finally turned toward me, her voice brittle. "You planned this?" "No," I said, setting my glass down. "You did. You all did. The day you decided who mattered and who didn't." Her voice cracked. You ruined everything. I leaned in just enough. I didn't ruin anything, I just stopped hiding. Then Chef Renata appeared beside me, placing a small card on the table. Apologies, Miss Leon, she said with a nod, but the press has arrived downstairs. They're requesting a photo of you and your family. Thanks for listening. If this story helped you unwind, don't forget to like and subscribe channel Reddit Stories to Fall Asleep too. There's a new tale waiting for you every night, right here. Sleep well.